Hi everybody, I'm Samantha Shad and this is our fourth lesson in how to write to happiness. Today we're going to take the obstacles in our skeleton for a story, X wants Y but Z. We're going to do but Z in order to build out a full story structure. We're going to talk about conflict, drama, story structure, and how to make your story look very professional. So, you came up with a nub, we had a character and a goal, and now the obstacles are everything that can go wrong. So sometimes you have a single obstacle. I'm poor, but I want to be a doctor. I got no money. I'm poor, well, I'm a kid, wants to be a doctor, but he's poor. The obstacle is poverty, right? But it's not just poverty, right? It's who is he obligated to help? What other problems does poverty bring? Does he get sickly? Can he afford medical care for himself? Does he have responsibilities beyond paying for his medical school? Does he have parents that need care? Does he have any disability himself? Does he have a sibling that's in need? Does he have hearing problems, seeing problems, any kind of other issues? Can he lose a scholarship? Maybe he has just enough money in a scholarship and he loses it. Or someone thinks he cheated. Or any of the things that can make the lack of finances stop his journey towards being a medical doctor, right? All of those obstacles have to be written down in a list. And so here's the list that you're going to write. What are the very, very worst things that can happen to your character seeking that goal? My character who wants a Pulitzer loses sight, can't read anymore. Can't type. Can't travel to investigate. Has a parent who can become sickly and needs immediate full care. Whatever the obstacles are, your job is to come up with all of the obstacles. And they are to be the very, very, very worst obstacles you can imagine. And you're not going to want your character to see those obstacles, so you're going to avoid making them really bad. But I'm here to tell you, they're going through it. Your imaginary character is going through this problem, not you, so be cruel. Make them really suffer, because the more you push that, the better your story is and the better your own healing is. So obstacles are the terribles. Make a complete list. Do not be kind about it. Why do we want these obstacles? Because the fundamental journey in a story is overcoming obstacles. If you make it too easy, it's not an interesting story. Every story has a very basic pattern, which I have in an enormously wonderful visual. Look at this chart. There are three pieces. I'm going to call it beginning, middle, and end. That's all you need. Beginning, middle, and end. Once you're very good at storytelling, you'll know what you really mean is Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. They are the beginning, the middle, and the end. Every good story has that structure, and you actually already know it. When you were in grade school, that's how you told the story. You were right. Each of those parts, Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, has a job. Act 1 tells us who our characters are, what the problems are, and what the ordinary world is. So, Act 1 tends to look slow, but it's very, very hard to craft it well because you're trying to be interesting and you're just handing your audience a lot of information. You're telling them who the character is, why they're on this journey, what the goal is, what the backstory is, what happened before the story started. It's kind of just running through a lot of info. Then something happens. Something big happens. Act 2 is the meat of your story. It's about 50% of the total story, and it's when everything happens. So the big thing that happens after Act 1 throws your character into the action. Usually, your character makes a plan at the beginning of Act 2, It looks like it's working well, and then everything falls apart. The end of Act 2 is the lowest point they can ever experience. So for you in writing it, the very worst possible outcome for all of these obstacles is the end of Act 2. It is hell on earth, or all is lost. Usually your main character not only didn't achieve the goal, but has lost some things along the road. So it's really bad. That's the end of Act 2. Act 3 is the end of your story. So what happens? Your character confronts the worst of the worst. He looks straight into all is lost and figures a way out, and then resolves the journey. Now, it can be a happy ending, it can be a sad ending, but it's a resolution. So in a tragedy, the character has failed to learn the right lessons and fails at the journey. In a happy ending, the character has learned something important and resolves it to our satisfaction and to his own. If it's about a kid that wants to go to medical school but has no money and has lost all of his scholarships, he has somehow figured out how to get a job in a medical lab that pays extra money and shows him that what he really cares about is helping people, including his family. That would be a resolution. Another resolution would be that he becomes a psychiatrist because there are better scholarships there, and he realizes it's the interaction with people that he loves, and so he becomes more engaged in that. Whatever your third act resolution is, though, it's the end of the story, and it has to be a good ending. It has to actually resolve the question of how your character is going to achieve the goal while facing those obstacles. So that is 3-act structure. I just want to say a little bit about structure. A lot of new writers think it's a formula. Okay, you want to call it a formula? It's a formula. You want to call it something else? Call it brain patternicity. We learn how to hear and see stories as patterns. So we are ready to hear the beginning at the beginning and find out about the characters, go on the journey in the middle, and get a resolution at the end. If you keep with that construct, your brain imposes patternicity, puts all the information about the structure somewhere up there, and lets you focus on the specifics. The more you veer away from that structure, the more the audience's brain has to concentrate on what the structure is, and you lose all the focus on your journey. So it's okay if you call it a formula. I don't care what you call it, but it is important to respect that when you apply that formula rigorously, what you're doing is helping your readers and your watchers understand the story you're giving them. So you're helping them. So with that in mind, come back next week where we'll talk about writing and rewriting. By the time you come back next week, it would be great if you had a quick idea of what your 3-act structure is. Some of the most important points of story in an order. Okay, see you next week. Thanks, everybody.